Hello, my name is Precious Vines Harris, and I am the Single Maven. Thank you so much for joining me today. The Single Maven is a brand devoted specifically to empowering single Christian women in their singleness. I'm super excited to announce that I've recently published my book, The Warrior Within: Facing Your Frustrations When You Feel Stuck. This is a copy of the book, and I'm super excited to share this with you all. The book has been published on Amazon in an ebook format as well as a paperback, so I do encourage you to check it out. In addition to that, we will have several giveaways and upcoming events to promote the book. So keep a lookout. If you've not subscribed to my YouTube channel, I encourage you to do that, as well as follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. In today's blog post, we're going to discuss episode 4 of The Later Daters. The Later Daters is a series which follows mature single individuals, 50s, 60s, and 70s plus, as they navigate the dating scene. This Netflix series was executive produced by former First Lady Michelle Obama. So I do encourage you to watch the show as I review the show. So this is episode 4, entitled It's a Vibe. So I want to open up looking at my notes and talking about Anise. So we follow Anise through about 2 to 3 dates now. Anise is, I think, 62 years old. She's an older Black female who's been married before, and now she's back on the dating scene. So with this date, I think this is probably the third date. Her third date is with Bill. Bill is a white gentleman from England. So in the previous episode, Anise shared with us how she has dated outside of her race before. She's dated white gentlemen probably a few times. She's only been on a second date once, but it's never progressed further than that. So she's definitely open to looking at it from a different perspective. She shared in the past how she's had reservations with dating outside of her race, but now she's open to it. And we see that her and Bill actually go out on a date. Now, as I'm watching this day, I'm going to give you some of my feedback. So some of the things that I saw with Anise and Bill on the date is her body language. I noticed how she was kind of hesitant in some parts of it to make eye contact with Bill. I felt that she was guarded in her body language. Bill shared that he only dates Black women. So he doesn't have a problem with interracial dating because that's pretty much what he does on a regular basis. I think he reveals that he has been married before to a Black woman and he has biracial children. So he's very open to looking at dating from a diverse lens. And one red flag that he raised was the fact that Anise shared that she has not dated as much as he has as it relates to interracial dating. And he thought that that was a red flag for him because considering his background is definitely different from hers, that may pose a problem. So looking at this date between Anise and Bill, I felt like they weren't necessarily attracted to each other. Bill did relay that in his post-date feedback, that he wasn't instantly or physically attracted to Anise. So I think that played a part as well, in addition to the fact that they have 2 different perspectives as it relates to, or history experiences, I would say, not perspectives only, but like history and dating, and also experience in interracial dating. So those 2 things may pose a problem as it relates to them being compatible, right? So the coach Logan gives some feedback to Anise, and what I have in my notes here is she says that Anise comes off as guarded. And I can definitely see that. I think that I can see in her body language was a little bit different from what she was saying as far as her being open to interracial dating. I think she still has some reservations as it relates to that. She has let us know that she came through the period of like desegregation and the civil rights movement. So with that being said, of course, based upon her history and things that she's experienced, that definitely colors her perspective as it relates to interracial dating. So the coach tells Anise that she does come off as guarded, and that Anise appears to always be the strong one as far as holding herself together. She doesn't have room to be sad. And Anise also relates that she says her kids does not leave room for her to, I guess, be more transparent and vulnerable too. And I think that probably goes back to Anise's history of, I think she lost her husband and she had to pretty much raise her kids herself. So she didn't necessarily have room to, like show weaknesses because of the fact that she had to be strong for her children. Let me move this ring light a little bit. I feel like it's in my glasses. So we see that perspective from Anise and sharing her, her reservations about being as transparent in front of her children. The coach tells Anise that she should lower her guard somewhat and let people in. It works better for her. I do agree. I talked about this a little bit in my previous review of episode 3 and talking about how the coach said that she advised some of the ladies to actually soften their approach. I think she gave that same advice to Lori as well. And that she doesn't have to be perfect, right? You don't have to perfect yourself. And I think that's one takeaway I would say as well. I feel like this ring light is still in my face. Hold on. I hate to turn it all the way around, but anyway. I think that's great advice because I think sometimes, especially if you are an older, more mature dater, meaning you're 30 plus, 40 plus, 50 plus, you're used to doing things on your own, right? If you're a strong-minded individual, a strong-minded female, sometimes that can interfere with your ability to be more feminine or soften your approach or be more transparent. I think that's something that you do have to learn as you move forward in dating and relationships, right? Not just dating, but as you're in a relationship, not necessarily having to perfect everything, right? So that's advice that the dating coach Logan gives Anise. And she advises her to be more vulnerable and soften herself, right? So let's move on to Nate. So with Nate, this is his third date with Lisa. I kind of mentioned this in the previous video, how I thought that Lisa gave the advice that Logan, the coach, was giving Anise and Lori. I feel like Lisa was able to exhibit that in her date with Nate. So we find out that Lisa's 56. She's divorced, 2 years single, has 2 kids. She's an esthetician. One surprising thing that we find out in the date that Nate has with Lisa is the fact that she has older kids, like 34 and 31. But her kids still live with her. I found that interesting as well. She said that she met her husband when she was 15. They pretty much dated. Then they got married right out of high school. Well, she was married for 33 years. They were together for 38 years. So pretty much that's like the only real relationship that she's had. And she has both of her adult kids living with her. She does say that she thinks she comes off too soft. One thing I did notice when she was on her date with Nate, she asked him, does he have kids? And he says yes. He pretty much tells the story of how his older daughter had a scholarship. I believe she was in college. She lost her scholarship. She didn't know what she was going to do. And him and his ex-wife pretty much gave her a tough love approach of saying, you can't come back home and live. You pretty much have to figure it out, which she did. He lets her know, I think that his daughter went into the Air Force or the Army or something, and she's doing well now. But his approach with parenting is pretty much after they become an adult, they have to figure it out themselves, which is drastically different from Lisa's approach of having her adult children live with her. And she's sharing with him the fact that she feels that they treat her as if they're little kids, like younger children. And she's like mommy versus mom now. So she shares that with him. And you can see a difference in the dynamic between how they parent. He says that was a red flag for him as far as the kids living with her. And I kind of agree, to be honest with you. I mean, I feel like if it was like, like a temporary situation or emergency type situation for, a short period of time, maybe. But if they're like living with their adult mom for endless amount of years, I don't really know the backstory. But if that's the case, that would be a red flag for me. I did notice with Lisa's approach on the date, she definitely smiled more. She was more open and listening. And you can tell when he shared his story as it relates to him being disabled, how he got out of the Army with the injury and all of that. he has shared that story before on other dates, but with Lisa, he was more open to it. And I think it's because she displayed more femininity and softening her approach in how she responded to him. So I think that was something that was interesting to me as far as him. I felt like, number one, he probably was attracted to her a little bit more. Now, you can let me know what you think about Lisa's outfit. I thought Lisa's outfit looked kind of young, to be honest with you. But who am I to judge people? Who am I to judge people? You can let me know what you think about her outfit. But that caused him to open up a little bit more. So I do think that, and I may do a video on this because I think it's something that women sometimes have to navigate. Some women have it perfected as far as being softer, more feminine, but sometimes I think it's harder in some contexts to even understand how that really looks. So I may do a little bit of research and make a video about it because it's not necessarily something that, at least for myself, I think that I have to look at sometimes, but I think also the longer you stay on the dating scene, and especially if you're not necessarily in relationships consistently where you have to navigate those things, as far as the male-female dynamic, that can be something that may be more problematic as you maneuver through dating. But he says the date went by fast and went by well. She says she's attracted to him. I think based upon his response, he's attracted to her. He did not say whether he was going to see her again because he said he wanted to go through the whole process of dating each person until he decides what he wants to do. So I can see where he's coming from with that, but I feel like with Nate, he's more hesitant to let someone in general. So him saying he's going to wait till the whole process ends, to me, feel like it may be a crutch based upon him saying like it's harder for him to get uncomfortable and let people in. So that may not be the best advice. I would say if I were to give anybody advice and they're going through the dating process, I feel like go on a second date or third date to see how it's going to work out versus waiting over time, because I think the more time you put between dates or meeting someone is more of an excuse not to follow up, or you may forget about the person. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But you all can let me know in the comments what you think. The next person is Suzanne. So Suzanne goes on her second date with Avery. They go to a Georgia Bulldogs game. One thing I thought that was interesting, he called her sweetie, and I don't think she really liked that. She wanted to be called her name. And I mean, I was thinking to myself, would I have thought something differently about it or said something? I may not have said anything unless it was a constant thing. Then I would have been like, I kind of prefer if you call me by my first name. But considering it's kind of like a term of endearment, and I think they were looking at something, the cooler in his trunk, and they were getting ready to walk to the game or whatever in the parking lot. She kind of went back and forth with him about it. I didn't necessarily see it being that big of a deal, but I feel like for some people it could be because they don't necessarily like those types of like female terms of endearment without necessarily having a relationship or knowing someone. So that's maybe a personal preference. I didn't really see anything wrong with it per se. But I felt like it was a great thing that they were able to mediate, her being a hardcore Georgia Bulldogs fan, him being an Alabama fan, and them going to a Georgia Bulldogs game together. I found that interesting. And it looked like they had fun, to be honest with you. All right, so we're going to move on to Lori. Lori has 2 kids, Kennedy and Sean. So we'll talk a little bit more about Lori than we are going to talk about some of the others, because this is the first date that Lori is going to have in general, right? She's a little bit behind some of the others in the process of the dating scene. So Lori has 2 children. They're grown. She said she's 59 years old, 7 years single, 3 kids. Oh, no, sorry. This is the actual profile of the person she's dating, which is Ty. He's 59, 7 years single, 3 kids, investor/entrepreneur. He said he's attracted to an intelligent woman, which I think Lori fits the profile for that. she critiques his outfit. He had like a suit coat on with a button down shirt, or maybe it was a sweater, and then he had a, like, you could see like the top of a white t-shirt under the shirt and the coat. I didn't really see anything wrong with it. I felt like he was just wearing layers, maybe because it's cold outside. I mean, I didn't really see anything wrong with it. She said he could upgrade from the white t-shirt, but considering he had a full dress shirt on with the suit coat, the t-shirt was under there. I didn't really see what, it wasn't like he had a white t-shirt on with nothing else. So I was like, okay. Um, Now this is one feedback I have for Lori. You all can let me know when you watch this episode. I thought Lori went in a little hard because she started asking question after question after question after question, like she was on an interview. And I was like, Lori, we're not at your part-time job on the social scene where you do interviews at events. She was asking him a lot of questions and quizzing him. And I was like, okay, that's a red flag to me. If I were to date someone and they kept asking me questions and not allow me the opportunity to ask questions or give feedback, that would be a red flag for me. So she was asking him, like, what is it like to be in a relationship with him? Then she proceeds to ask him, why is he looking away? And I was like, oh my gosh. Because not necessarily everyone looks you right in the eye when they're talking to you the whole time, right? And I think for him, and I do it myself, like if I'm thinking about something, my eyes may dart to the left or to the right, and then I come back to center because I'm thinking about my answer. But he was kind of formulating his answer. He may look off to the side and then come back. She was like, well, why are you looking away? What are you looking at? And I was thinking that was kind of rude. Like, I didn't really like that. That would have been exhausting for me. And I did write that in my notes. It was exhausting for me. So my advice to Laura would be, let him drive, honey. That's what I wrote down. Let him drive, honey. I think that one thing you do have to recognize is you cannot, when you're first, especially on the first date with people, you can't interact with them as if you've known them forever, right? I think the first date is going to be a time of observation, a time of interaction, and a time of listening. Because how can you know if you're interested in seeing that person again if you're not listening, right? If you're always asking questions, never giving them the opportunity to provide feedback or for them to interject or for them to actually, take the ball and run with the conversation, how are you going to know what type of person they are to potentially date and or be in a relationship with, right? You have to think about that. And then when you're first meeting people, it's one of those things where it's kind of like a give and take. You give a little bit, I give a little bit. We figure out, okay, do we want to move forward or not? But if you're constantly asking questions, just like Pam was on that first date, I forgot the man's name that she went out with, but she was just rambling after a certain point. It's like, okay, are you leaving room for him to interject in the conversation, right? He wants to be a part of the date. He's not on an interview, Lori. So he actually said he kind of liked her personality as far as her being a stronger type personality. He does ask her out on a second date. And what's interesting when they try to exchange numbers, she says that his number is already in her phone because she kept saying, I know you from somewhere. I know you from somewhere. And he was like, I don't know where that could be. We'll come to find out when she was putting his number in to exchange numbers for the second date, I think they had met on Plenty of Fish, but she said it was like 2007 or 17 or something. And she was like, well, does that mean that we didn't like each other? Were we a match? And he was like, 2017? And I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, honey, if that was 7 years ago, what does it really matter at this point? I mean, unless it was a horrible experience. I feel like if it was a horrible experience, you would remember it. That's just me. Because, I mean, I know in my past dating life, if I had horrible experiences with people, I remember those people and I don't ever want to see them again. But just because you have somebody's number, y'all might have dated a couple of times when you were on, I think, Plenty of Fish or something. Okay. So, at any rate, they kind of end the date with exchanging numbers or whatever. So, let's move on to Pam. So Pam at this point is post follow-up, I think, from Bill, which was her second date. So Pam does admit, we talked about this before in previous videos. She says she feels the silence with nonsense and words. And the coach says that she wants her to be courageous and try new things, right? But one thing that Pam says I think is also pertinent is she says it's better to stop something than to get hurt. She doesn't want to do that again. And I think that's something too that kind of prevents people from moving forward as it relates to dating, is the fact that if they're trying to protect themselves and they don't want to get hurt in the process based upon previous experiences, like if they've been in a bad relationship or they've had their heart broken or whatever, or been disappointed, they may put up a guard. And I think her guard was self-sabotage, right? I don't want to necessarily see how this date is going to go forward because I don't want to be hurt. So I'm going to go ahead on and reject you before you reject me by self-sabotaging this date. I'm going to out-talk you, over-talk you, and talk about complete nonsense so you will not be interested in asking me out on a date again, right? So you do have to be mindful if you have any of those tendencies. I think it's something that you have to ask yourself of, do I have self-protective measures that I put in place to protect myself from being hurt? Meaning I don't let myself get too close to people, or I try to push them away, or I try to circumvent them asking me out on a date, or I try to sabotage the date. It could be various things, right? We all have ways to protect ourselves from getting hurt. But at the end of the day, how is it going to benefit you in the long run, right? If you want to be in a relationship with someone, you're going to have to open yourself up. And the sad part about it is it could be 50-50. You open yourself up and it could be great, or you open yourself up and it could be horrible. At the end of the day, you're not going to know, right? You have to take that chance to say, I'm actually dating because I want my future to be better. I want my future to be filled with someone that I'm compatible with, that I can build a future in a relationship with. But if you don't open yourself up to that possibility by saying, I'm going to block this from happening because I could get hurt, you're never going to know what's going to happen, right? So I felt that was interesting, something kind of like a learning lesson in all of this. You all can definitely let me know what you think about it. One thing that Pam says, she felt rejected by Bill because she said he didn't call her back or something. I think Bill said he was going out of town for something, and she didn't necessarily follow up. And her granddaughter was telling her to at least follow up with him one more time to see if he's interested in her. And if he's not interested, if he doesn't respond, then let it go. And I do agree. I think sometimes where in dating, we're so leery of reaching out and being vulnerable that sometimes we may miss out on certain things for us. But you're never going to know how things are going to work if you don't necessarily give yourself the chance or the opportunity to see how it's going to work. You have to stretch yourself in dating. That's one of the learning lessons that I would say that for anybody, it's like any other goal that you have in life, you have to stretch yourself. And stretching yourself means going outside of your comfort zone, extending yourself to reach out to people and opportunities, and taking advantage of things and seeing what's going to happen. Because at the end of the day, if it's not Bill, it could be the next gentleman. But in order for you to get to the next gentleman, you have to eliminate Bill. And the only way to eliminate Bill is to see, okay, if he is out of town, and maybe that's why he hasn't responded, or he thought it was my turn to respond based upon him saying he's going to be out of town. But you're never going to know if you don't follow up, right? Take that step to follow up. Don't stalk him, though. Don't run behind no man, honey. I'm going to tell you right now, do not chase a man. But follow up. It's okay to follow up, right? And her granddaughter kind of crafted a short, nice text to follow up. And just see what happens. If he doesn't respond or he's evasive, then it is what it is. But at least you can say that I've done everything I can in this situation to see if there's an opportunity there. Okay? All right, so these are my takeaways from episode 4. First thing I have is don't be afraid to go on the second date if you're not sure if you like the person. I think sometimes, unless it's a horrible, horrible, horrible first date and you're like, we're really not compatible, I don't ever want to meet him again. Go out on a second date and see what happens. I think some of the ladies were more hesitant. I don't know why. But just because you go out on a second date with someone does not mean that you're in love with them or you even like them. It's just exploring it more, right? Because sometimes first dates can be kind of quirky, or you don't have enough time, or depending upon what you do, that type of date didn't lend itself well to getting to know the person. So you need more time to figure out, okay, should I, be interested in this person or not? Second thing is to soften yourself up, right? Be more vulnerable. We talked about that. Be human. Be able to open yourself up to the possibility of something. Smile. Make the person be receptive or feel receptive. Like if you are, let's just say, for example, you're trying to go into a store and buy something. You've never been in that store before. You don't know too much about it. You're more receptive to make a purchase in a store if somebody greets you and welcomes you and asks questions, right? If they smile, they seem like they're actually interested in you being a part of the experience, the shopping experience, right? So look at it in the same aspect of dating, right? If I'm sitting across from the table from someone and they never open their mouth, they never smile, they never nod, they never ask questions, they don't lean into the conversation, why would I think they're interested in me being a part of their dating experience, right? So some of the being more human and softening yourself up and being more vulnerable is just more of a common sense way of looking at communication, right? It's a two-way street. If you want somebody to be interested in you, you have to be interested in them, and vice versa. You don't always have to be the strong one. You don't always have to be in control. The next bit of advice I have is be cautious, but not too cautious, right? So, of course, be cautious when you're dating because you want to be safe. Ladies, you want to be safe while you're dating, but don't be too cautious as it doesn't allow you to get to your ultimate goal, right? It's okay to exchange numbers with people because at the end of the day, it's a little bit different now from what it was before. People have they can screen people. If you don't want to answer the phone, don't answer the phone. A lot of people now text or message before they even call. So it's one of those things where if you give your number and you don't necessarily want to deal with that person, block them. You know what I mean? But at least open yourself up to the possibility of learning about new people, right? I also have here leave space for the man to lead on the first date. I talked about that. This is a personal preference. Don't overtalk, don't overshare, and also allow them the opportunity to interact within the conversation. Okay. And the last thing I have here is don't be so guarded because it causes you to miss out on great opportunities. So I have thoroughly enjoyed reviewing episode 4. I'm going to jump into episode 5. And I hope you all are watching with me as well. So with that being said, I thank you for tuning in to my review of episode 4. It's a vibe of the Later Dater series on Netflix. I ask you always to like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. And until next time.